from Steve Hennig.
So the next item on the agenda is approval of the June 1st minutes. I started to read those and realized I wasn't at the meeting, so didn't do me any good. Did anybody else read them or have any comments?
I do. The Helsinki sign, I think we have the wrong address on there. It has 201 South Montana Street.
Ooh, yeah. Thank you.
Yay me.
Thanks. Are there any other corrections or additions? Someone please make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the last minutes from the last meeting.
With the corrections,
With the corrections, correct, I'm sorry, I'm doing two things at once.
I'll second for the June 1st minutes.
So we have a motion from John and a second from Bobby. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Approved? The next item on the agenda is a public item, comments, excuse me. And this is for items that are on the agenda. That means they're on the printed agenda. And if you have a comment on something that's on the printed agenda, but you're not part of a presentation, you don't have to stand up right now if you don't want to. But if you have something, please come forward now. If you have something that's not on the agenda that you'd like to comment on, that comment period is at the end of the agenda, and we'll call that again. So this is for public comment on items on the agenda. Yes?
So I'd like to talk about it when you guys review it, but.
So what is your name and what is your relationship?
Gordon McNeese and I represent Mr. Jesse Petrakis, who is the owner of 725 West Quartz, which is considered a dangerous building this time and needs the east wall demoed.
Okay,
and
so.
it was on your docket here.
So you can give your comments now, or you can wait, and I will call on you later.
Yeah, I have some questions for you guys and stuff about the property and about aggregate and the materials that we can use and restrictions on them and so forth and so on.
So let's save that for when the item is on the agenda.
Correct.
And then we'll be sure that you have the opportunity to discuss that with the board at that time.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other public comment, we'll go to our first presentation, and that is concerning the National Park Initiative. Holly Sando is going to make a presentation. Do you want to do any introduction, Mary?
Thank you. Holly is here, and Holly, I'm going to get your organization name wrong, but you're kind of like the Friends of the National Park Service, and they work in various undertakings to help the National Park Service support national park activities and promotion. And she has agreed to lead the initiative to establish a national park of sorts here in Butte. We have a steering committee that's been organized, and I am part of that. Shanna Adams, who is here tonight, is also part of that. Karen Burns, we have Aubrey Japp and Lindsay McCulhay from the archives and other people. And so Holly is just here to explain to you all a little bit about what this national parks status is and what it would mean for Butte.
Thanks, Mary.
So Holly, you just say your name and your address, and then you can proceed.
Holly Sambo, 321 East Main Street, Bozeman, Montana. That's the NPCA address. So I'm with the National Parks Conservation Association. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Manager. About a little over a year ago, so just before the pandemic in March, we first came to Butte. Some folks had reached out to us that they were interested in moving this initiative forward. I'm sure many of you are aware that a National Historical Park effort has been going on and off in Butte all the way back to the 80s. And this last effort, we're focusing very specifically on a historical park. So there had been some other initiatives that also included a heritage area. This would be specifically a national park that would be under the National Park Service. The National Park Service manages 421 sites. So the closest site that would be sort of similar to a Butte site is in Deer Lodge, which is the Grant Coors. That's a historical site under the National Park Service site for an example of a Park Service site. So I've been doing some general outreach, and then, as Mary said, I found a group of citizens here that were very interested in this and had had really great qualifications to be in an advisory committee for us. So I feel that the Butte citizens are leading this, but my organization, what we can bring to that effort is we work all across the country. So we're headquartered in DC. We have government affairs staff and communication staff, and then we are regionally located here in Bozeman, and we have an office in Whitefish. So we specifically work a lot on Yellowstone and Glacier, but I work on the smaller parks. And so we feel that Butte should qualify for National Historical Park, and we would like to work with the community to get it to that finish line. So to get a National Historical Park is an act of Congress. So we're in a multi-phased campaign to get to there. Right now, we're just doing massive outreach to the community and trying to get community support for that. So what our congressmen and what the National Park Service are going to want to see the most for this effort is that the community is behind this and they want to see that. So at this point, I don't have any direct asks of the Preservation Committee, but I just want to get it out there and see if you guys have questions or concerns. We want to make sure we're getting this information out to everybody so nobody feels that they weren't included in getting their concerns and questions asked, and so that when we start rolling out a major effort in the community, everybody's been talked to and been pulled into this effort. So we want as much feedback from people as possible. I had Mary hand out, we have a fact sheet, so it has kind of on the front there, it's listing the different interpretive. So the National Park Service qualifies historical sites based off of different interpretive qualities, and for a historic district, you have already received that significance under for the mining, for the industry, and then labor. And so those would be the two ones we would be pursuing for National Historical Park, but there's also immigration and a few other things that could be told then through that historical park site. And what a historical park site would look like in Butte would most likely be 1 or 2 National Park Service staff managing a visitor center, and the visitor center would tell kind of an overall story of the history here in Butte, but it would be kind of like more of an orientation center that would bring people in, give them the full story, and then tell them to go to other sites that would tell kind of more specific stories. So if they wanted to, learn more about mining, they would send them to the World Museum of Mining, or if they wanted to learn more about the Chinese history in Butte, they could go to the Meiwa Museum. That is kind of the model that we are looking at. We haven't yet reached out to the National Park Service, so those things aren't detailed, but that's what we would be looking at. So I know that's a lot of information, and it's maybe the first time you're hearing about it. I think you've heard about it before through CPR, but if you have questions for me right now, or I can hand out my card and folks can email me or call if they have questions then. But right now I just am wanting to get this information out, how we're approaching this right now in the different phases we're at. So right now we're just at outreach, trying to get as much information out there to the public as possible and making sure we're getting questions and concerns brought to us. So I don't know if we want to take time for questions or concerns, or it seems like you have a pretty full agenda. If other folks just want to reach out to me later, that's fine as well.
I think this would be an opportunity for us to ask a few questions if they have them right now, and then they could, we could get your information through Mary
Wonderful.
and do it later. So if anybody has any questions, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a good deal for Butte to expand on this historic atmosphere. And naturally, being affiliated with the federal government, I read through your pamphlet here and all that, there would be more of an opportunity to secure historic grants for these buildings. My question to you is basically, you mentioned museums and things like that. Right now, I guess I'm going to kind of put you on the carpet. Is there anything that we're lacking in Butte that we should focus on to maybe further suffice the this program coming to Butte, or do you think we're okay?
I mean, I don't see anything lacking. I think a part of, one of the reasons why the Park Service would want to come here is because it's one of the criteria that there's a need. So they need to see that there's a need, that there's something not being fulfilled in the community that the Park Service could fulfill. And so I think in that way, it's nice that there's kind of that little bit of a missing piece. I think what you're missing is somebody who's telling the full story, all the different stories, the immigration story, the labor story, the mining story, all of those together in one place. And so from that point of view, it's good that you don't have that kind of center and you don't have that uptown, like there, so that's good. And I think the things that you do, so the number one thing that you need to have to be to move along in this process is to be considered, or to already be approved as a historic landmark district. So you already have that. So you have the biggest hurdle to get to a national historical park. So you have that. I think you have really great cooperation among folks in doing that different work. And so I think when I look at all the criteria for what the Park Service are looking for here, Butte has it. We just need to make sure that folks want to have it here. I think the biggest concern I would have and the Park Service would have is that people wouldn't want to do so the Park Service, like having a historical park here would have the same regulations as the historic district. So right, the federal government can't make anybody do anything with their own private property, but they'd want to see a willingness from the community to keep that historical character in the district there. So that would be, I think, a cohesive message from the community that, you know, they're not against having the historical character of the like Uptown maintained.
Okay. I just have one more thing. Here locally now, and this would be one of the biggest questions I think to ask, is that we have small businesses here that provide tours through these buildings and all that, and then also our Chamber of Commerce is heavily involved in, you know, with the bus or the car they take around and all that. Would you guys tie in with that to basically support those people that are already here?
Yeah, so that would be the goal of the historical park, that they would work in conjunction with those people, not against them. So the Park Service doesn't want to come in and replicate anything that's already being done. Right. And a really great example of that, and I know there's been people before me that have really made that tie-in, is Keweenaw in Michigan. Like they do that. So the Park Service has a historical park there. They manage their visitor center. They do some tours with some, you know, rangers there, but then they pair up and work with all of those folks. And that's something I've been talking with them a lot about as we get further down, having one of them or some of the folks in that business community present to Butte and explain how they work with the Park Service and how it benefits them. Because from what I understand, talking to the folks out there, they all find it beneficial to be a part of the Park Service.
Thank you for your great information.
Mm-hmm.
The other John.
Just real quick, you talked about the national park. Yes, I do. I just have to get closer, I guess.
No, it's defective. Could you use the other? Oh, there it goes.
You can get double mic'd.
Okay. There it is. Okay. Just real quick, you know, you talked about national park, you know, like with Yellowstone Park, and they also have like with the, there we go. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just had a real problem with the
Okay, let me do that. Okay, here we go. Just with the Smithsonian Institute and stuff, this is all the same Park Service that we're speaking about here.
Yep.
And so then you guys would actually have a office here in Butte then, at that time?
Yeah, so I'm not with the Park Service, so I'm with the National Parks Conservation Association, which is a nonprofit that works with the National Park Service. But yes, the goal would be if this became a National Historical Park, they would have both administrative offices and a visitor center here with a hand. Usually the way it goes with a new park, they only start with a handful of staff and then it builds through the years as your congressional budget increases.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anyone else have a question? Bobby?
Hi, Holly. I'm Bobby Stoffer, and I was in on one of the calls you had last year, and I'm really excited that you're continuing on. My question is whether you're considering the Anselmo Mine Yard for your interpretive center, or if that's even on the table at this point.
It has definitely been brought up. We haven't gotten as far to, start evaluating it. I will say that, so the biggest hurdle for getting a visitor center is that any property must be donated to the Park Service, and it must go through remediation before the Park Service will take it. So I think getting a hazardous waste study on the Anselmo and then knowing the kind of cost for remediation, those are the things, once the Park Service takes over, their budget will start paying for repairs and all of those things, but they will not pay for remediation or take anything that potentially is hazardous, just because they've been on the hook for a lot of, and I think that is the reason why it's taken this long to move across this process, because back in the 80s, I think they were really wary of being involved in a property that was a Superfund site. And so I think another big hurdle that has happened is with, the consent decree being signed, I think there's going to be less fear from them. And also the new model is that they own very little and then they just partner with private ownership. So I think that's definitely a possibility, but all of those things would have to go through the process before they would consider taking it. Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay, thanks, Holly.
Thank you so much for your time.
So the next item on the agenda is the draft Uptown Butte Master Plan, and I don't know exactly who's going to be presenting, but this is a kind of a cooperative project, the preparation of it from DHM Design and A&E Design. And I guess Paul Filicetti is going to be the first one to speak, or maybe the only one. Thanks, Paul.
We also have Walker Christensen is on the line. He is out of state. He is watching the meeting live stream. And so I am uncertain, Paul, if you or Walker want to speak first, or?
I think I'm just going to.
Summarize, okay?
I think I'm just going to jump in.
Okay.
And I do have a copy of the.
That's running on that PC here. It's not running here, so I'll need someone to work on there, and I can do both. You'll take us well with the stream.
So you all should have gotten I'm sorry, my name's Paul Filicetti. I'm an historic preservation architect with A&E Architects, A&E Design out of Missoula. And as Mary suggested, I've been working with DHM, Walker Christensen, and RPI Consulting, which is Gabe Preston, in the process of developing the master plan for Butte. Mary, do you mind flipping through that, or do you have to? No, I would love to flip through it. Okay, awesome. You just signal me? Sure. So tonight I'm just going to walk through some of the highlights of the plan, so you have a little bit of a background of where, understand, of course, this is a preliminary review, so it's not intended to be a final review. You have, we're hoping to have your comments, later in the month, and then there'll be a public process and whatnot. So this is kind of initiating that public process, and you guys are one of the first groups to get to see the plan. And you should have all gotten an electronic version, I hope, and that's what I'm going to walk through tonight. So I think it is a pretty solid draft, but it's also an opportunity for you to provide feedback. And I don't expect you to provide all your feedback tonight. So don't feel compelled to, like, no pressure here. That's the idea. It's like plenty of time for you to contemplate this and provide feedback. So with that, we'll jump into it. In the next slide, just wanted to talk about just a general vision of the plan. There are 4 major concepts it's built around. One is the idea of Uptown Butte, Montana's, you can flip to the next one, Uptown Butte, Montana's premier urban core. So we talk about that idea and all the points behind it in Chapter 2. Chapter 3 deals with the Uptown Butte, a clean, safe, walkable, and vibrant destination. So there we talk about lighting, vacant buildings, public-private partnerships, all the multiple things around that idea in enhancements that would make it a clean, Uptown Butte, a clean, walkable, vibrant, safe community. And then Chapter 4 is when I really want to focus on with you tonight, and that is the integrity of the architectural resources in Uptown as a key to economic development of Butte. So we'll talk about that a little bit further in detail. And finally, Chapter 5 is Tell the Stories of Butte America. And that is just an opportunity to really sell the idea of Butte. And that chapter kind of breaks that down. As I mentioned, this is you guys are the first group to see this, so congratulations on that score. And looking for, I think talking to Mary, it sounds like you guys are going to be sitting down and doing a more thorough review and written comments. It'd be awesome to come back to Walker, or to Mary through Walker, and then eventually to Walker and back to us. But if we could get something like that by October 19th or the week of the 19th, that'd be awesome. And then thinking that there's going to be some larger public presentation later in October, probably during the week of the 25th. So if you're thinking ahead there. So the first portion of the document, and Mary, you can just kind of flip through those first sheets, is the executive summary. So if you want to just kind of get a broad brush overview of the entire plan, the first 10 or so pages talks about those vision statements and some key points that are later developed much more in further depth as we go through it. If you jump to page 17, sorry, just to point out, during this public process, there have been over 40 or so meetings that have taken place that either Walker has had with groups and organizations, or Gabe has had, or A&E has had with people. So there's been a lot of input building up to this process. And just one point there is that on April 29th, we did meet with HPC and CPR. So there was that initial review that took place back then, and hopefully those comments were integrated into this document. Moving forward then, talk about the history, project location. So really this is kind of building up to this idea of the major chapters in the book. And if you just continue through, the red line that's indicated there is the Uptown Central Business District. So as we come to the first chapter, Chapter 2, the idea of Uptown Butte, Montana's premier urban core. This lays out some of the concepts behind that idea. And again, I'm not going to get into these tonight. I really want to focus on Chapter 4. And Mary, you can just roll through those so people can see those. Then we come to Chapter 3, and the idea of creating a clean, safe, walkable, vibrant destination. So this is a discussion of what is improvements that could be made. And just to call your attention to, for instance, in this lower right-hand corner, that sketch is trying to show what simple improvements could be made to perhaps a building that doesn't have, or needs some improvement, just to improve the street facade. And if we proceed through on this image is trying to show potentially some street improvements that could be made, including curbs extensions, crosswalks, bike lanes. So that, the report talks a lot about that. There's a discussion in there about mobility and forms of mobility, micro-mobility, walking, bikes, how pedestrians move around uptown. Talking about alleys, security and safety, additional measures there, which include lighting, signage, wayfinding, all those components that go along with it. Here, this is a discussion of looking at the alleys and potentially improvements within the alleys that create vistas and focal points within Uptown to something beyond. And the next page shows potentially improvements that could be made to, again, kind of open up a space that may not otherwise be that user-friendly to somebody, perhaps after dark. The image on the left is a idea that, again, incorporating those street improvements, also incorporating signage and graphics that really help to designate the Uptown as a distinct district. And here, the idea of creating within the Uptown area, creating spaces within the Uptown that are more event-type spaces, smaller and larger event-type spaces that could occur. And then really, the next slide is focusing attention on what could potentially be full-time public access points, public parks, and really selling that idea of those public parks rather than just single-use type spaces. So I'm going to flip forward and just let you roll through some of those and get to chapter 4. So this is one I want to focus in a little bit more. The integrity of the architectural resources of Uptown are key to economic revitalization of Butte. And I encourage you all to take as much time as you can to review this chapter. This is the one that we really like to see some feedback on. We start with just a general introduction and kind of the context of some of what has built or made Butte the National Historic Landmark District that it is, including the revitalization plan, the comprehensive plan, and the historic preservation plan. Ultimately, I think it comes down to highlighting the landmark district in Uptown and what that means to development. Both when we talk about development, we're talking about adaptive reuse, preservation, reconstruction, perhaps in some cases, new development, perhaps it's an addition. It could be as simple as painting your exterior windows. So the variety of that is, we're trying to capture that all in this idea that is all within this landmark district, and these are modifications that take place. And developing on that idea that the landmark district is a unique space, unlike any other in Montana, perhaps both in scale, certainly, but in its architectural features and integrity. We talk a lot about architectural integrity in here as well. And then talk about the next slide, or next images, and the next one, what type of improvements we're recommending or suggesting. And these improvements are elaborated later on in the implementation plan at the end of the document, which I'll show you a glimpse of here later. So we talk about involvement in historic preservation, how we can increase that involvement in HP processes, which perhaps it includes tours. The big one here to recognize here is, on this page, is development of the Uptown core. So we all recognize that Butte, we talk about the landmark district, we talk about the historic district, we talk about the central business district, and now we're going to throw one more in there, thinking that if there's one thing in the master planning process that we want to target, is preservation of the Uptown core. And here the slide on the left is, or the image on the left, lower left there, is trying to indicate a boundary of what would be an overlay for the Uptown core. The Uptown core being an area that has more significance, more architectural integrity, more of what represents the overall character of the National Historic Landmark District, the historic district, and everything that developed around Butte, that becomes Butte. That is, without this area, there's a loss of all the other things that are Butte in an architectural sense. So preservation of the core is the primary feature of and identifying what that core is. So this boundary indicated here is just an idea. We're looking for feedback on the extent of that. And the next slide talks about integrity. And this is probably something you're all familiar with in terms of Secretary of Interior standards, SOI standards, and that language of integrity and architectural integrity. So we want to bring that into this document as part of the master plan process. And this is verbatim out of SOI to incorporate it in. And then we go through and talk about what is important within the Uptown core. And it's density, form, massing, and rhythm, and we elaborate on those types of ideas. Tripartite design, certainly in Butte, I think you can't talk about Uptown Butte without talking about materials and that material integrity. Specifically, I think it's brick, and the color of the brick is so important. So our next recommendation is, now that we've kind of introduced this idea of Uptown core, we also want to suggest that there should be a need for design guidelines to protect those resources, guide new development, guide changes in the Uptown core, guide additions to the building, guide how people improve or change out their storefronts, change their windows, make modifications, in particular to the public face of their buildings. That is, we're not necessarily talking about interiors specifically, unless you provide us feedback in that score, but really we're talking about the public face. So the street face, prominent street face, perhaps we could even go to the alley side if alleys are important, but here the primary focus is to the street. So we're talking about preservation, restoration, reconstruction, renovation, adaptive reuse, and specifically new construction. And developing, we're making a recommendation that we develop someone develop a set of design guidelines. We also make the recommendation the design guidelines should be a part of, based within the Secretary of Interior standards, and that the HPC be the guiding voice behind review. So in essence, that's what this whole section is going to capture. With that, we talk about the Historic Preservation website. So this is a lot of information to put out there, and we feel that our recommendation here is to develop a website that is a landing page for people who are looking at the Uptown core for any type of project they're going to be working on. So they can go there and find quick links to be able to do an FAQ, find out information on how to proceed with this process. So not just to blindside everybody, but to provide them with an information landing page that really provides them with all the information, hopefully, that they would need to move forward with whatever project that they are looking at doing. So this is another recommendation. And we give some hot links in there, which hopefully those are active, so you can, as you go through that, you'll be able to get into those links. The one thing I will point out in that list here, as we go through that, we don't mention the local register, and we'd like to add that to that list. So as you think about that, that would be one of the components I think that's missing. Next, we are recommending that in some capacity of developing a map or a database of historic resources. It'd be great to do it for the entire landmark district. I think that would be the ultimate goal. But the primary focus would be to capture what's in the landmark district specific to the Uptown core, or at least the area, the boundary of the Uptown core, and those 200 plus properties within that area. So really to focus in on that, get that metadata, everything. There's a perception that we heard in the process that there's a lot of, you have to be kind of in the know, or some things about Butte, Uptown buildings, you don't know because you don't, that information isn't publicly available. we want to change that idea that this information should be publicly available. You should be able to find out the history of the buildings, what the ownership chain was, what's happening to the building today, and whatever is going on with that property, and capture that in a website that people could, perhaps eventually somebody's walking down the street with their smartphone and they're able to walk by a building and it tells them what's going on. So it's, it becomes a tour for heritage tourism as well. But I think that's a long-range goal. First range goal is just to develop a website that documents and as, again, another means for people to understand what's going on in Uptown and educate them on the historic resources that are there. Next, our recommendation is a contribution or call attention to the potential for, and this is a big idea, but capturing this idea that we recommend that certain properties, and we haven't identified how those certain properties are, but each year there's a focus on 2 to 3 properties within the Uptown core. They can be a vacant piece of land or a modern building that is non-contributing or a contributing resource, however that gets defined. But there's a focus on those for development. So that each year there's a log that's being developed and this history of these buildings are being captured in a sense of, as a developer, this year we're focusing on these 2 buildings. So if somebody comes to a landing page, a website, or a real estate agent is looking, these 2 buildings that have a special attention, or these 2 properties would have a special attention, 2 to 3 properties that would have special attention, perhaps special funding sources would be put to them that really enhance their ability to look at and be developed. So it's a big idea, but something we're recommending. Also on this page, we're talking about looking at incentives for preservation projects. So we're thinking, okay, we've developed this overlay, we've developed these design guidelines, and we're focusing attention on these buildings, but we want to also encourage people financially to be involved. And how can we do that? What are the means that people can find or assist them in finding money? So we go money or resources to help them. And so on the next page, we talk about what this could break down into. Perhaps there's a development of the design assistance program where there's professionals, structural engineers, architectural preservation architects, whatever that case is that's decided, that are out there, a pre-selected group that's been vetted. We know they're going to, we know they know what the SOI standards are. We know that the structural engineers understand what historic buildings are, and that they can work with these Uptown property owners or developers, however that gets defined, but there's a grant assistance behind that can help those property owners with the review of their process, design guidelines, whatever that is, to bring their properties into compliance. Next is economics for preservation projects, and that can be anything from, we talk about tax credits, Main Street, Uptown Butte, Save America's Treasures, which would tie well with the last, the National Park Service type ideas. Butte-Silver, both the national register, the local register that's had, if there's any sort of incentives there to be on that. The URA, Superfund Advisory, Butte CPR, Montana Historic Preservation Grant Program through the Department of Commerce. And these are just some ideas. You may have others. Northwestern Energy Grants, Butte-Silver Community Block Grants, Developmental Block Grants, tax increment financing, any sort of incentive that can help property owners find or seek additional funds to support them in their need to meet the design guidelines and meet some of the more restrictive issues that are being within the Uptown core, for properties within the Uptown core. So that's the meat of the document that I'd like you to really focus in on. I'm just going to go through the chapter 5 here too, and that is the idea of telling the stories. And
Paul,
this is
could you not go through that? Because
Yes.
I'm sure that there might be other comments, and we've already been for 20 minutes on this agenda item.
Sure.
And so is there going to, I can't remember his name, Walker, is he going to have a comment at this time as well? Is he still there? Gone? Maybe while you try to reconnect with them. Oh, he's still there.
Walker believes Paul covered it very well, and we should open the discussion.
Oh,
But maybe, I mean, we
good
could-
job, Paul. So is there any comments, any questions that you guys would like to discuss right now?
I'm very interested in this project and all that, but the questions I've been getting from the citizens of Uptown Butte is basically, number one, and Butte's famous for this, is we go in and we do this work and all that stuff, and it turns out gorgeous. And then pretty soon we have to deal with a vaulted sidewalk, we have to deal with a new sewer or water going, say, into the Shriner Building or the YMCA or things like that. And another question that was brought up to me, basically, and this is something to look at, is snow removal during the winter, because Uptown Butte is usually a mess from the water running down the hill, and if it isn't handled properly, especially with those islands in the middle of the streets. And another one brought to me by the merchants was the fact that if you go over Park Street with just single traffic now, with those islands in there, where are these people going to park to deliver their goods to the merchants? I think that we seriously got to look at these. I mean, these are the people that are involved in Uptown Butte. I like this project, don't get me wrong, but I think that right now the way I feel is that we have to give these people some answers and all that where we're at. I don't know if all the vaulted sidewalks have been completed, possibly. I've never researched it. But I know that there'll probably be new utilities going right into the core of these buildings on Park, and another building over there, I believe on the corner of Washington and Park, two of the larger projects coming up. So I guess I'm not really in on when this is going to take place, if they're going to look at this and all that, but I think this is something seriously that, you know, before moving forward, that we at least have an explanation to the merchants that are uptown and the people that live uptown, the parking, how they're going to be able to deliver their goods, and how they're going to be able to maintain the roads during the 9 months of winter, or say, let's cut it short, let's go 8 months of winter that we do have. So I think that that's probably what you'll be getting a lot of questioning on, and I just thought, I mean, I don't want to be the elephant in the room or anything, but you're going to get asked this question more than once, so I just thought I'd let you know that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are great comments. Thank you.
John?
How you doing today?
Good.
Yeah, I got a couple of things here. A couple of years ago, we had Jeff Speck come into town, and we were sold all this ideas on the bike lanes, and Bristow's and all this stuff was going to magically mushroom from bike lanes, you know. And in this book here, this Rehnquist, he talks about big projects and that, where like in Baltimore, they just stuck around and they just worked on the small areas around town and got the buildings themselves, and the rest of it all came across earlier. Like I said, this is a lot. One of the things I did notice in the brochure in that, one group of people that were missing, and this is where I was very concerned with Jeff Specs, with that there was no truck drivers or nobody from the Teamsters or anybody involved in the street planning on this. When you look at bigger cities or just any cities and that, when you look at the traffic flow, that is probably one of the biggest complaints that people have, whether they go to Butte, Bozeman, Missoula, Chicago, or wherever, is traffic flow. And I've always felt that the input from professional drivers, whether they be UPS drivers, firemen, police officers, ambulance drivers, to get their input onto this. And I've always felt that the streets are a utility. They're not to be decorated. They should be just, you know, for paint only, and you can change the paint when necessary to do it. But to have a coalition of professional drivers to overlook this stuff, and that's even like putting trees down the middle of a major thoroughfare like Montana Street, is going to obstruct the vision when you're driving. And if we can get everything there to, not to impede any of the traffic flow, but to enhance traffic flow. One of the other things we were talking about at that time too was just even the simplest thing like trying to get the lights on Main Street timed. So if you're going 23 miles an hour up Main Street in wintertime and that, you know that if I just go 23 miles an hour, I can hit all those lights green and get through town. But if you've got somebody just going through town, they have to stop, and so you start getting congestion. When you start putting those islands and those bump outs in the street, it makes it more difficult to make right-hand turns. And so you're gonna start getting bunched up. So now you got events and stuff going. So a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to imagine now, but in my occupation, I see this all the time. And so that's one aspect I would like to see is some more professional drivers and these people be involved in that and help design the streets. And because this is where they make their living. This is where we're at every day. I drove for, my dad was a milk truck driver. At 13 years old, I was driving a milk truck here in Butte. So I had a real good teacher there. One of the other aspects I would like to touch on really quick here too, and this is the signage parts in Butte here. I know everybody wants to talk about trees. I think we need more trees on this planet. Yes, we do. But in the past, we keep putting these trees on the streets, and I'm in a situation now where I'll be installing a sign Saturday for the Axe Bar. And right next to where we've got to put the sign, there's a big tree. So coming west off of from Park Street, you won't be able to see this sign. We have this problem with the Covalite Theater and also with the Butte Archives. I did the sign for and it was funny because they says, well, nobody knows where the archives at, so I painted a nice big wall on the side of the wall there, sign on the wall, and a nice hanging sign out there on Main Street so they can see where the archives was, but the trees are still there, so in the summertime, you can't see them. And so I would like to see something of that order where we can look at where the trees are planted. I'm all for like the trees around the campus at Butte High School and places like that. I mean, they're in different parks and that. But sometimes they're, actually they impede the traffic view and also the pedestrian view. Like, because if you're walking down the street, and this is what we're trying to promote is, more walkable traffic. And so that way people can see the businesses, with the signs out there. And I think this would be a great improvement, something to look at with that, just where we plant the trees, because like I said, putting these trees right in front of businesses not only blocks the sign, but also blocks the architecture also.
Yeah, thank you, John. Those are great comments too.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
You bet.
Tracy? Bobby or? So I did have it kind of, because of time, there wasn't a chance for you to say anything about it, but the whole zoning and what the interrelationship between that and in the design design guidelines, and that is something I think that is something that really deserves additional consideration because and I think you admitted in the plan that it's going to require 2 ordinance changes, the Historic Preservation Commission and in zoning or planning or something like that. And I think we're always a little leery of changes to the Historic Preservation Ordinance because it is always an opportunity to try to take away instead of add, and we can't afford to take away. We think we're at bare bones at this point. So I do have some concerns about that. But maybe more importantly, I have concerns about the opportunity for us to give comments to you by October 13th or 16th or whatever you said, because, if we were going to actually discuss this further and develop some written comments, we can't do that outside of our schedule, which is, our next meeting is on November 2nd, and so the closest we could provide written comments is on the 3rd of November, and that is assuming that the Historic Preservation Commission would form a small subcommittee to just try to develop some of that sort of thing. So I guess before I even poll the Historic Preservation Commission about whether or not they want to go to that effort to prepare written comments. Are those comments delivered on no earlier than the 3rd of November? Are those, can they be appropriately considered in the timeframe that you have identified?
This is a Walker question. Oh, good. Yeah.
But I'm Shanna Adams, president of the Uptown Butte Master Plan Association. November 3rd is fine. We absolutely need your comments and your feedback. We'd kind of hope to have them this month just because we will be presenting this draft to the public the week of October 25th. So, if, you know, we're kind of thinking maybe we could get your comments ahead of that and get them incorporated before that meeting, but if we can't, that's fine. The whole getting this draft report to a final, we're shooting for the end of the year. So November is still time to incorporate those comments, and they're very important to us.
Okay, thanks, Shanna. Thanks
Yeah.
for that clarification.
And I can respond to a couple of these other comments if you'd like me to, but I know time's important. If you want to just move on, that's okay.
Sorry, yes, if you can be brief, that would be great.
Okay, yep, I'll be brief. Just a couple of things. So regarding traffic and input, we did have meetings with the Public Works Department, Fire Department, Police, and got their input in terms of the infrastructure in Uptown and what upgrades might need to occur and what condition the infrastructure is in right now. So we have kind of a good sense of that. I think any of these major intersection improvements would absolutely need to be coordinated to understand if there are vaulted sidewalks that need to be repaired at that time, if there are other water, sewer service lines, those kind of things would be incorporated into those projects. With regard to a median on Park Street, we're not proposing a median on Park Street. So just kind of take a good look at these. We are proposing a median on Montana Street. And I'll talk about that just really briefly. That right-of-way is 110 feet wide, and it's great for traffic right now. People can just fly down Montana Street. But what we want in Uptown Butte is for people to slow down and park and walk around and enjoy themselves and experience the architecture. So we're really not interested in increasing traffic flow. We're interested in slowing people down, and we're interested in how they feel when they're in Uptown. We absolutely have to focus on, you know, making sure those deliveries can happen, the commerce can happen, but if people are flying through Uptown and they're flying on Broadway, that's counterproductive to a vibrant, walkable community that we want to have. So I would just encourage you to kind of be open to some of those ideas. They're a little bit counterintuitive sometimes. And I know as a civil engineer, we're really focused a lot of times on traffic flow, right? But from an urban planner perspective, that's not always what we want. So I certainly have had to kind of go through an education myself. But yeah, I think I'll leave my comments there. But thank you for your feedback, and we'll absolutely get that incorporated.
Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation. Very interesting project.
So if I can just close by saying the implementation, Chapter 6, is the implementation plan. It outlines each of the recommendations in a little bit more formal format. So just keep that in mind as well. If you get through the reading of the document, the implementation plan at the very end is the kind of the process outlined how these will take place. So your comments on that would be appreciated as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. At this point, the Historic Preservation Commission can't take any action because it was a presentation, but I guess I would be interested in a discussion about whether or not we want to make comments as a commission, or we want to just have comments that are made individually to the preparers, and if we are going to make them as a commission, that requires some commitment by individual members to form a subcommittee, which could only be 3 individuals, so that we don't break open meeting laws, in order to kind of put some comments together and to discuss with other members something that we would have a good, as near to final as could be considered by the HPC at the next meeting. So if we could just hear a few comments from committee members, if that's something that they want to do, or what is their pleasure in this regard. John?
I would suggest, I like the suggestion of maybe of the subcommittee, because this would give us a chance to gather our thoughts and research it a lot more thoroughly, and give these people a reply by the time frame that they are asking for. I think the biggest thing that I got is that we are facing now is the change in the historic preservation ordinance. We're going to have to deal with that. There's some things that we definitely got to deal with here. And I think that you people have heard basically the questions that have been asked from some of the people in the public already and all that. I like Uptown Butte. I mean, I'm not against it and all that stuff. I mean, we just want this to flow good for everybody and make the project a great thing and all that. But I think that what you got tonight was basically a taste that's probably going to come out after it all is all out there, okay? So we want to work with you any way that we can. So I would make a motion, or we can get some more comment, to form a subcommittee to work. Naturally, the expert that we have in this room is Mary, and like I said, dig into it. Then we can visit with other people and then get something back to you exactly where everybody's at. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Any other commissioners have any comments?
I just agreeing with John. He just pretty much said what I was going to ask, so, about, so we get the committee going.
Mary?
Of course, I would really welcome a committee to work on this, and, certainly I would be the secretary for that. I think we really need to, for our due diligence, we really just need to concentrate on the part of the plan that's dealing with historic preservation, which is Chapter 4, and then the implementation table. And I've already gone through it. I've got a lot of ideas. I think Mitzi will have a lot of ideas. And so I think it would be wonderful if we could just get a subcommittee together that would agree that we could talk things over. And then if other members wanted to provide some comment on that as well, feedback to the committee, that we can get some really solid recommendations to this group and make this something that we feel really good about buying into.
I'd rather not make a motion because we don't really have it on the agenda. I think if we can just agree that we would have a committee meet and we could have volunteers. Other than John, is there anybody else that has time to work on this? It would have to be within the next 2 weeks in order for us to have something to the commission to approve on November 2nd. So, John, you would like to be on that committee as well? No?
I will make it as painless as possible.
Well, how about if I would be available to review it after an initial meeting? I'm worrying about workload issues, but I would want to provide editing and fleshing out and any of that. I don't, maybe I can. I'm just worried about overcommitting and not coming through, but, and if only 3 people can be on the committee, maybe I can look at it after 3 people are working on it. I'm not sure.
That would be great. We just have to make sure that our meetings only have 3 members at the same time. And so it does not preclude any, once we start to have an outline, it doesn't preclude, and in fact, we could insist on kind of a distribution of the outline to the other members so they would have the chance to look at it before the final recommendations of the committee. And I believe that meets the open meeting laws of the state of Montana. So what I heard is that John Reardon, John Wetzel, and I didn't say it out loud, but Mitzi Russillian will serve on the committee and work with Mary McCormick to look at this a little bit more closely, and maybe we can talk about a schedule, the 3 of us and Mary, at the end of this meeting, after the meeting concludes. So if nobody has any other comments, thank you for volunteering everything that you could, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. The next item is design review COA for 617 South Wyoming. Mary will do an introduction for us.
Okay, just one second. I would like to just thank Holly so much, Paul, and Shanna for attending tonight and giving us these wonderful presentations, and we look forward to both of these initiatives. So our first project for consideration tonight is a design review COA for a rehabilitation project at, I keep getting the address messed up, but historically it's a fourplex at 615-17 South Wyoming, which is right below the high school, right south of the high school. And here is the site map of the property. There's just this large fourplex or so on the property. The property owner is Fort Home, and Keegan Hall, their project manager, is here to represent the project tonight. Fort Home actually also owns the lot on the south of the side of the property, and I don't know if you guys are going to combine that someday. But here is the 1959 photograph of this fourplex or plus. There's living space in the attic, and I think that may have been added later on. The 1959 photograph just shows the north side of the building. The building faces east towards Wyoming. What is being proposed, I'm just going to preface that, and then Keegan can come up and speak a little bit more. This is a brick masonry, or is it brick veneer? I can't remember. Building. There's some more repointing that needs to be done on the brick towards the foundation. They're going to be using appropriate mortar, a limestone-based mortar that is similar in texture, color, tooling, and composition to the existing mortar. They're going to be rehabilitating this front porch. They're going to be keeping the existing roof. It's a shed roof. And, the fascia and details and these columns, but they're proposing to replace the railings. The new railings will be built to code, and they'll be the same basic design as the existing railings. Some of the railings have been rebuilt already, but they're just like 1.5 by 1 wood posts and simple handrails. They're proposing on the first floor right now there's the access to this porch is from the north. You climb up these stairs over here and then enter. They're proposing to take that access stairs off. And actually, it's kind of interesting. If you look at the historic photograph, you can see those stairs weren't there. There's railing there, and they're going to replace that with railings. And then they're going to establish the staircase at the south end. Now, right now, there is a deck on the south side of the property, on the south side of the building, and they're going to be removing that one-story deck. And I don't think that deck was there. Historically, it doesn't. If you look at the photograph, you can see that the railings are at the south end, which suggests, I assume that there was a central entry. But what they're going to do is reestablish the entry over here. They're going to, make a staircase. And of course, it's going to have to be built to meet current codes, but it'll have wood treads and risers and a railing comparable in design to the replacement railing proposed for the front porch. Of course, I believe this skirting is going to have to be replaced, and that will be replaced with vertical wood, similar in dimensions to the materials here. And then the other thing is you can see there's ceilings were covered in beadboard, and if you look at this picture of the ceiling of the upper story, you can see that there's missing and falling apart beadboard, and so they're going to keep as much of the existing beadboard as possible, but replace the damaged and missing beadboard. And then, as I told you, they'll be removing this south deck that wraps around to the back porch and then reconstructing this back porch. Now, the back porch currently goes up to this third-story deck, and I see now that there's a door in this dormer, gable roof dormer here. What they're proposing to do is just return this to probably what it was originally, is a 2-story wood porch. It's going to have a shed roof comparable to the shed roof you see on the front. They're going to do replacement posts. They'll be like 4x4 or 6x6 posts wrapped in boards, 1x8s or 1x6, and with the same detailing that you see on the front porch. And then railings built like there is on the front porch, just simple post rails that are built to code, and then new access stairs that also will be built to code. The one thing that I forgot to mention, and the one thing that might be of concern, is they've asked to use an alternative material for the porch decks, and that would be Fibron. in a natural wood color. The other, there's window and door replacements. You know, there's been a lot of stuff going on here. I didn't put the photograph of the north wall in here, but if you looked at your packet, you could see that the brick veneer was taken off there at some time ago, and that wall was resided with vinyl, and it has newer windows, and they're not going to be doing anything to that wall. But on the south elevation here, there's a couple of these bigger windows. Those were historically, you know, probably 1/1 double hungs. At some point, those units were taken out, and there's just a single pane of glass in there, and they're going to return those to double hung, you know, hung windows, 1/1. Keegan said they haven't made a decision yet, but they're either going to do wood replacements or Anderson Series 100s. And then they're also going to replace this little fixed window that's a modified window, and they're just going to put in another fixed window here. On the back, we have some double hungs on the first story that are in disarray, and they're going to be replaced, but the double hungs up on the second story are good, and they're going to keep those. They're going to be replacing the doors with either wood or fiberglass units, half-lights units with a panel configuration at the base, and then replace the transom windows as needed with new single-pane windows, but they'll keep all the transoms intact and replace those windows. There'll also be window replacements up in these dormers. I don't know if I have a picture of one. This has an original or a older window left in it. It looks like a double hung when you look at it. It's a 1/1 light configuration, but it's actually it's a casement window. They're going to keep that 1/1 configuration. They might change it to a double hung or a casement or a fixed with that dividing light there, and I think that would be appropriate. So I think I've captured it all. If you would like to come up and address the commission, Keegan, that would be great.
Fancy. Hi, Keegan Hall, 2207 Harvard. Here to represent Fort and Home, working on the 615 South Wyoming fourplex. So yeah, Mary, I think covered it pretty well. So essentially, some of the older windows have been replaced with. They took just they're double pane glass. Just took a single, piece, and they just stuck them in there and trimmed them with some woods. And some of those have been broken, or some have one has a bullet hole in it, I think. So we're going to be replacing those windows, and then the sash windows on the side, replacing those fixed windows with the sash, which is likely the historic configuration, both for ventilation and to restore it to how it used to look. And then on that front porch, I'll just mention that there was at some point, you can kind of see it in the old photo, but it is a bit blurry. There was a central staircase going up to that center front door. And then there was actually a front door on the left and the right side that went into the bottom units, and those have been replaced with picture windows. So our plan is to just keep those picture windows. And it would be nice to put in that central staircase, but because of the depth of the porch it's only 3'7" deep, doesn't really give you enough space to put in a staircase and then have a landing into the unit. So we're gonna put it off that south side there. And then with the brickwork, it's a masonry veneer, and that north wall, I think it was a few years ago now, collapsed, so that came down and has been replaced with vinyl siding. And the south wall has a couple noticeable cracks, particularly along the edge of the chimney where that veneer is starting to peel away, so we want to get in there and repoint that and make sure it's properly secured and tied into the stud wall and keep that wall from falling down in the future, obviously. And then a couple of the arched headers over the front doors on that front facade. There's actually, the bricks are starting to come out of the wall, so they're kind of hanging out over there. So we really want to get in there and repoint those, tie them back in. So, if there's, happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, because I don't know what fibron is, so would you tell us what it is?
I probably said that wrong, but it's the same material that we approved for use at the Casa Grandes. It's a composite wood. It is,
Just fibers?
yeah, it's a composite wood. It's not Trex. It looks a lot better than Trex. They do have things, like gray and stuff like that, but they're gonna use a natural wood color. And it looks much more like, plank wood flooring certainly than Trex. I think we
Thanks.
approved it for one other project as well.
I do have another question. Is there living space on the upper story where the dormers are? Because it occurred to me, why the heck would they have a stairway to the top, and that would be for fire egress? And so that seems like you might have a problem if there is living space, particularly bedrooms upstairs.
So yeah, there are, and I think my guess is it was a later renovation of the property, not like in the last 20 years probably, but not when it was originally built, because it was listed as a fourplex going like in the old cadastral or Sanborn maps, but there is living space, and on the inside is kind of a weird setup. The only access is a staircase that you access via a 2-foot wide hallway that kind of wraps around. Our plan will probably just remove that. It's just a partition wall, so we'll probably open that up so that we can connect it to one of the units on the ground floor and have access that way. And then there'll probably be an egress window onto the back porch to meet the code from that 3rd-story window. So you'd be able to, I don't think we need the external staircase because we'll have the interior one, but we'll have like an egress window so that, you could get out that way onto the roof of the back porch, if that makes sense.
All I can say is that legal? But okay, yikes,
so.
it seems like that's something, I mean, I'd just say that would be my only concern about whether or not the design would change once there was some review of that. And so if there would be a design change, then that's something that would have to be brought back to the HPC, in my opinion. But are there other comments? John, your light's on.
Okay, I'm sorry. I heard the word siding. I've drove by this building quite a bit and all that, and I never noticed. Did you mention that there is vinyl siding on the north side? Okay. Color being? It's a maroon. A maroon?
But yeah.
It doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, there's a picture in your packet.
Oh, yeah, and I didn't tune in. It shut off and all that stuff. As long as, the historical preservation, that's why we're here. The integrity is here and all that, and just like to mention the fact that, with this siding and blending in, I get where you're at as far as doing that wall, redoing that wall with brick and all that, and at least it's not 10, huh? So I just had to ask those questions, and I appreciate, and thank you for your interest in these projects. I think that part of town of Butte is really a diamond in the rough. I think there's going to be a lot more of these buildings being redone, so I want to thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comment? Very quiet. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Officer regarding the design of 615, 617 South Wyoming?
I will move that we approve the design review for 615, 17 South Wyoming.
John, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thanks, Keegan. The next project, this gentleman's been waiting for a long time, but Here you get a go. This is, first, Mary will give us an overview of the demolition/design review, COA. This is 725 West Quartz.
Yeah, this is a real cute little two-story brick flat. It's down, on the base of Missoula Gulch on West Quartz Street. Here's a picture of it. It's got a twin next door that's actually a double. This one is just I think a oneplex, and the next door is a duplex. Anyway, there was some problems here. The wall veneer on the east side, it's wood frame with a brick veneer. The wall veneer is falling off, as you can see in this picture here. And the neighbors next door are very concerned about their house. As you can see, there's not much room between these two houses, and Butte-Silver did tag this building as dangerous. The property owner did contract with Mr. McGinnis here, and I'll let you say your name when you get up here again, and you'll say it right, I'm sorry. And I apologize for that. And he has been working with the planning office and building code official on an abatement plan, and then I kind of stepped in to talk about, they're working on how this could be made sound while we're concerned about what it's going to look like when it's done. And I spoke with you and the property owner, and what was discussed, is that they want to keep, it's a very narrow space in here, to try to take all that veneer down and put it back up would be quite an undertaking. And so what they're proposing is to keep the parapets up here and then keep the several courses of brick down to the bottom of the roof line, so that you're not, because I'm sure there's joists and stuff going in the wall. And then also, I think you told me that your mason said that they could keep as much as 5 to 8 feet of brick at the north end or the south end of the east wall, which would be right here from, like from this window down. I do see there's some cracking there, and take that down. So the brick would stay here, so we'd have that wrap around, and at the top, to stabilize it, you were proposing to put a metal plate and then frame out this opening, and then cover that opening with wood lap siding that would be painted a color similar to the brick, so that it would blend in. The windows that you see in the wall, or that you don't see, would be, the existing windows would be reused, or new windows, Anderson Series 1/1 double single hungs, would be installed in their place, and they would be of the same size as the existing windows, and the openings would have the same brick detail. And then they're going to have to do some repointing on the granite rubble stone foundation, and they would be using, I hope I was clear on the brick and the foundation, that we need to have an appropriate mortar mix, a soft mortar mix that is similar in texture, tooling, composition, and color to the existing mortar. And so, Mr. McNee, would you like to come up and address the commission? You could just press that red button there, and you'd be able to speak.
Okay. The only problem we really have with what the Historical Society is proposing back to us is they no longer make a 4-inch lap siding. They make a 6 1/4-inch lap siding, and if you look at the neighbor's house, that's a 6 1/4-inch masonite siding, which is not wood, which is put over a brick facade also. But the problem is they don't make it anymore. Now, we can take a 6 1/4 inch lap siding and adjust it, but it's gonna be exorbitantly costly for us. Other than that, we will probably save more of the brick falsificate up at the top, because we're gonna come down to the last level at the back and save the first 8, 10, 12 rows, whatever we can save. And it'll come all the way across the front. So as it steps down, it goes back to the building. So from the back of the building, we're gonna come all the way across with a plate. And I've had this assessed by Broken Stone Masonry. They say that we can save that much of it, and 5 to 12 feet of the southeast corner.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
I mean, I really, when we talked, you said you were gonna use wood lap siding and,
Yes.
and that's great. We, the HPC over the years has agreed to approve other types of siding like
Correct.
LP Smart or Hardy board, which is not, but anyway, but wood siding would be great. I personally would think that, 6 1/4 would be fine for this project.
Any comments from the commission? I have a comment. Since you are going to use wood siding, I
Yes.
think that's the only alternative we have at this point. And because most of it is, because Broken Stones has said they'll be able to pull back the removal of the brick, maybe even as far as 12 feet, it would be almost impossible to see the siding anyway. So I think, I hope that can happen. I hope Broken Stones understands. I think they're probably segmented arches on the top of the windows. They must be segmented arches when they are done, not a flat arch or anything like that. That needs to be made very clear to Broken Stone that that's.
Excuse me. So the second window here that has been repaired in the past that is flat and square needs to have an arch in it?
No, if it has one, if you're going to keep it, that would be fine. But the one that is closest to the street,
Correct.
that would have to have a segmented arch header.
Okay.
If it has one now, it needs to have,
Okay, yeah.
and it just, if, in the event of a catastrophe, there needs to just be this understanding that that's what would be necessary.
Absolutely.
I also I can't remember the conditions that Mary put on that other than the ones we were just discussing, but I wanted to also have whoever makes a motion make a consideration about making brick salvage available. The salvage can be either done by you, the owner, or Broken Stones, but if you don't elect to salvage the brick should be made available. I hope we can make a condition, it should be made available to the Restore or to Butte Citizens for Preservation and Revitalization, because brick is as scarce as hen's teeth in this town, and we don't want any going to the dump. So that's my only comment about that, if you want to address that.
I will make the brick available to anyone that would like to come and get it. Absolutely. I'll put an ad in the paper, whatever you guys want. I mean, if they want to come and get it and salvage the brick, that's fine. Broken Stone Masonry did comment that the backside of a lot of the brick is reusable if we wanted to reface the building, but it's like 50 grand to reface the building. So that's why we're not going to replace the brick. We will keep as much as we can. Mr. Petrakis has no problem with dumping money into the building. He's restoring, actually he owns the property next to it too. Now, the other problem we have is Mr. Stye, the neighbor, is at times uncooperative and at times cooperative. His mother lives in the home. So, but we're trying to, the city has talked to him and we're trying to move forward as quickly as we can with this. The other question we had was, the face of 725 has been painted in the past. can we change the color? Can we repaint it? Can we, I mean, what can we do with it? And the other question is there anywhere I can go to get information on what the Historical Society allows and does not allow?
This is our source right here. She will tell you exactly what is allowed and what is not allowed. What I would say about the brick color, I'm putting my fingers in my ears and I'm going la, 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 because that is really not, that's a separate project in my estimation. Our reservation officer can argue with me on that one. But in any case, we usually don't comment on brick color, or paint color on brick or any other surface.
So I would just like to say that the projects come to the HPC for design review if someone's receiving a local public incentive, like the project we just reviewed. They are in the URA tax increment district, and so they've requested funding to help with their project, so that project came to us. This you're outside the URA district, you're not getting any money. But the reason your project is being reviewed by the HPC is because of that demolition permit. So if the planning department is issuing a demolition permit, then they bring it over to me, and then we can make design review a condition of approval of the demolition permit. And that's usually how I structure things. This one's just a little more difficult because it's tag dangerous and we need the demolition to proceed. So I just kind of framed it more as a design review. So when it comes to any other changes to your little beautiful little brick home here, there's nothing, unless they're getting a local, it won't come to us for a design review. I am certainly eager to provide some comments and assistance. Of course, we don't recommend ever, if you were coming to us for design review, you had unpainted brick, we would not approve painting the brick. In this case, you have painted brick, and we have not been the paint color patrol because that can get so gnarly. Certainly, I always like a brick-like color, but I don't mind this green actually, and so, but that's definitely more yours. My big, a brick-like color is always nice to make a building look more historic. The one pet peeve I have is I hate gray, especially gray on brick buildings. So, but that's your owner's call. If there's other things that you would, certainly we hope that you would retain, those great turn posts and the, doors and the original attributes of that building.
The neighboring building has had the parapet redone last year.
The parapet?
Up at the top, yes.
Yeah.
The neighboring building had it redone last year. Mr. Petrakis plans to keep the buildings as original as possible. The neighboring building is almost done, and then he plans to continue on to the 725.
Yeah.
The city did say that once the wall was demoed and it was inspected, they would take it off the dangerous buildings list.
Yes, and we want that to happen as quickly as possible.
They've already approved the permit. I picked up the permit Friday. I'll be posting it on my way out of town tonight, and I believe they gave me 90 days to finish it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, we've come to some good compromises here. I think you can move forward with your project. Certainly, someday we might have design guidelines for residential areas that would be printed and you could see them, but otherwise, I am always available, and I do, as part of my job, I'm always eager and happy to provide design assistance.
Now, we're open to using another material besides wood lap siding, but as far as I know, and from everyone that I've contacted and the research I've done so far, the smallest stuff manufactured at this point in time is 6 1/4.
Yeah. Well, we certainly would appreciate you using wood siding.
Wood is not a problem.
Okay. Thank you. That's great.
Fantastic.
Okay, thanks for your comments. I'll entertain a motion. And based on the conversation, I hope that the motion will include an approval of lap siding at 6 1/4 wood lap siding, since that is what the proponent is requesting. And also, I personally would appreciate the opportunity for Butte CPR or other organizations or individuals to do brick salvage. So keep that in mind if you're going to make a motion. Thank you.
I'm going to mess this up. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve demolition and design review for 725 West Quartz with the condition that lap siding with 6 1/4 inch wood siding is used, and with the consideration for any brick that's demoed off there to be offered to CPR or otherwise utilized in the community where needed or wanted, rather than going to the dump.
We're going to keep you. Is there a second? John seconded. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? We're done. Motion as presented is approved. You can talk to Mary if you have any questions going forward. At this point, she knows what our pleasure is in this regard, and she can give you contact information for CPR or other organizations or individuals who might be searching for brick and who will salvage it off-site, not off the wall, but off-site.
Off the front of the property, not off the wall. Also, you can purchase brick for these buildings in Bozeman. There is somebody over there that does have brick for these buildings. The proper dimension, size, composition, so forth and so on, because we had to replace some on the neighboring building. And Mr. Petrakis also commented that anyone is welcome to come and look at the neighboring downstairs unit, which is almost completed and almost fully restored. So, all original doors, original molding, all that stuff.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. You guys have
I'm
a
going to call you and get information about the brick person in Bozeman, because there's people calling me all the time. I've got your number. I'll give you a call
I
tomorrow.
have a half a pallet in the garage at 725 Quartz.
Really? Okay.
Drive over there, give him a 12-pack of beer, and he'll load a pallet of brick on your truck. He's a pretty good guy, so.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have a great night.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the demolition COA for 1246 Short. Mary will make a presentation.
So this house is down in that funny little addition in what we call South Butte as far as the landmark district. It's, still north of Front Street. But it was, I believe if you read one of Dick Gibson's articles lately, he talked about William Farrell, who ran the Parrott smelter, and I believe he platted this addition. Of course, it's close to the Berkeley pit, and then the is it Centennial? I can't remember, the big industrial complex is right by there. Some of you will remember, if you were on the commission a few years ago, we did a house at 1205 Short Street. There was a demolition permit, and that house is still there. So anyway, this is an alley house. Historically, the main house was right here. It was a brick house, and it caught fire and was severely damaged and demolished I don't know when, before I was preservation officer, I believe, because I don't remember ever dealing with it, and it left this alley house behind. Butte-Silver got the property as a tax deed, somebody didn't pay the taxes, and it fell to Butte-Silver. And Butte-Silver offered it at public auction, the whole property, twice. Nobody purchased it. And then a couple years ago, we did offer this little alley house out on a developer's packet. And we didn't receive a viable offer, that was supposed to include a plan for rehabilitation. And, the rehabilitation ranged from planting bushes in the front yard to taking the rest of the vinyl siding off. So anyway, the house is constantly getting broken into, and the neighbors have complained a lot, so Silver Bow would like to demolish it. Here's the south, the back elevation, and the west. One of the big problems with this house is that it doesn't have a formal foundation. It's on timber seals, and it's not like it's got a raise at all. I mean, when you walk in there on the floors, it's like the floor is on the ground. They did put these concrete curbs, what I called them, along the outside, but they're not a foundation. We did have the house, Community Enrichment did open the house for HPC members to come see on September 27th. And you can see that, yes, it is being broken into and people have been staying there. It's just a couple of rooms and then a kitchen and a bathroom. It's very, very small. There's, the holes in the ceiling, holes in the walls. It's just not something that I believe can, I don't think someone's going to snap this up for rehabilitation. I think it's in far too gone. It's very small, and so I recommended approval of this demolition permit.
Comments from the commission? Anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would move that we approve the demolition for, what's the address? I'm sorry. 1246 Short Street.
We have a motion and second to approve demolition for 1246 Short. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes. So we're getting down to the sort of the end of our agenda, but we're not finished yet. Stick around. Staff, is there anything that you want to report as staff? And then after that, a member can also bring up any item they want to discuss.
Yeah, I just wanted to update you. I did prepare and submit a SARTA grant for additional funding necessary to complete the Basin Creek house restoration project. We put that project out to bid and didn't have enough money, and construction costs have wreaked havoc on my budget. I did submit this grant instead of preservation, I submitted it under the Community Development Program because of the community use aspect of this house, that it'll have a visitor center open to the public, and that it'll be a place for people that are wishing to access the new reservoir park, that they'll be able to come in and check out. So we'll just wait to see how that goes, and hopefully I did meet with our committee, the council, when referred the bidding process back to our little committee, and it's comprised of Karen Burns and Pat Canine and I and Pat Holland, and they agreed to put this back out to bid. We'll wait until we hear about SARTA and then put it back out to bid. So hopefully this will be a go next December or next January. Otherwise, I have nothing to report.
So, Bobby, I believe you said you didn't attend the last SARTA meeting, but you probably know what the schedule is. You might just kind of refresh everybody's memory if you have that, or say anything else you want to, any other things you've learned about SARTA since you've attended a meeting or so.
Yeah, the September meeting was actually canceled. There was no September meeting. I did go to the August meeting, and Todd Hunkler made a presentation about the development of the corner of Iron in Montana. It was more of an informational presentation. I guess SARTA had awarded some initial money for infrastructure for that location. And I think they'll be coming back with an additional request. So that was pretty much all that was on the agenda for the August meeting. I believe grant applications were due on October 1st. And so our meeting will be coming up on October 28th, and I'm sure Julia will outline our review process to start then.
Great. How about any other, did you have something else, Mary?
I just wanted to say, in regards to the Habitat, or Montana and Iron Street project, Todd has been working with me on that, and we had some siting discussions, and we've made a decision what to bring forward, but he didn't get back to me until late last week, and I was in the thralls of finishing my grant, so we will, and they still got a ways to go, but we will be reviewing that project next month. I just want to let you know that. I also reviewed several grants where people were doing a preservation request just to help them a little bit and stuff, so there is a lot coming in, is what there's a lot of SARTA, going to be lots of SARTA requests.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Todd is with the National Affordable Housing Network, is who he was representing. I should have mentioned that.
Does any other member have anything they want to talk about? Just want to get out of here? Okay. Are there any announcements other than we've talked about? So the last item on the agenda is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Please come forward and push the button on the mic and give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Here. Good evening, y'all. My name is Corinne DeLutis, and I own a studio over at the O'Rourke Building. Give you a little context of the question. I only have two questions. And I'm standing here in an owner's advisory committee capacity. In other words, I'm speaking for everyone, well, the majority of owners in the building. We have an issue with not our building, our south building, but there's some demolition that's about to happen on the north building. There's a shore-up plan for that building, but the engineering report has been submitted, but no one's been able to see it. And we want to know, where is this engineering report?
Thank you for your concerns. It is not a part of the public record, I believe. If it is, I'm sure you could get it from someone in planning. All I'll say is I believe it is not in the public it's not part of the public record. However, I can understand your concerns. I'm not sure what the Historic Preservation Commission can do for you in that regard. We do not have, and we have not seen the engineering plan.
That goes back to the question I might have asked first. What is the status of the demolition that it looks like it's been approved? Because there's a gate up today, there's activity going on.
So Mary can address that, but we did, at our last meeting, we did look, we had a presentation and we voted to agree, based on the information we had received, to approve the demolition and the design review in a project that was similar to what you saw here today, which was a demolition is a partial demolition because there's going to be a removal of a wall, part of a wall, and a part of another wall, and the design review is so that it would be together, it would be put together in a manner that was appropriate for the building. And that's all that we can do as a Historic Preservation Commission is approve the demolition and the design review with the information that we are given. We can't force a schedule or anything like that, so I just want to make that clear, but Mary could maybe just address that a little bit more.
Let me say this, I mean, you can approve a demolition with a shore-up plan and no engineering plan? Maybe Mary can answer.
I mean, that's what makes these a little more complicated. It's, is that, so what I have to do is get an understanding from the building code official that they have approved the abatement plan, that they have approved the demolition, and the plan for the rest, and how it's going to be restored. And I cannot say if they did that based on receiving the engineer's report or based on other information that the owner has provided. But so, that's why I walk kind of this fine line on these. These are unusual projects for us.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, they've come at the same time, and I am grateful that planning is including us in the process so that, what we're really concerned about is what it's going to look like. I mean, we can't do the analysis of if it's going to be structurally sound, but what we're concerned about is what it's going to look like from the exterior when they're done.
Okay, fair enough.
And so I did talk to the building official today, and I did go look at the building. He said what they have done is they have shorted up the hole that's over there from the inside.
Okay.
And you'll see that they have put a fence around.
Yep.
And they have acquired the demolition permit. They haven't submitted it yet. I think they're trying to find a contractor to do the demolition. And then they know that they are under the gun to get that. I mean, they have a certain amount of time that they have to get that done. So, they know they're under their gun. To me, it looks like they're moving forward.
The current owners.
The current owners, yes, are moving forward to get that wall remediated. So that was certainly my impression when I talked to the building code official. That I don't know the specifics, about the engineering report.
Well, it would almost, there's no way they can do the restoration cosmetically without an engineering plan. And the former owners of the building had an engineering plan, which was also never revealed. So they're playing hot potato with the engineering report. We just want to see it. We know we can't have a copy. But we can look at it because I've looked at the shore up plan. That's fine. But we're here going, if the thing fell down in the middle of the winter, most of us are doing short-term rentals in the front building. We are out of business.
I can just say, I do believe that the building code official is doing his due diligence on this, and that he's.
Okay.
I do believe that.
Okay.
I believe, I
don't,
have confidence in his.
That our experience with him has been a negative one.
Yeah, well, I'm really sorry about that, and but our hands are tied. We don't have it. I can't compel them to give, to make it public.
Yeah.
And I don't know the status, and I just, I asked them today, what is going on? And, I'll admit they don't want to talk about the engineering report with me, and I can't,
Oh, no, I asked
But
the owner.
I do feel
I asked the owner of the
confident.
building today for that report. And again, with the crickets, so I'm not really sure what's happening.
Yeah, well,
All
I do
know
think
is
there
all of us
is gonna
collectively
be.
in the front
it's-
building, We are very concerned. It is a dangerous building. It's not a cosmetic problem.
No, it's not, it's
And
not
they
a cos,
need- Yeah, and they need to fix the foundation before any of the pretty goes on the outside of the building.
and certainly that was what is being proposed, is they're gonna shore up that foundation with reinforced concrete. And I think that's gonna happen first, and then they're gonna take the brick down.
Okay.
And then relay the brick. I mean, they'll frame it. It's not gonna, right now it's brick masonry. It's 3 widths of brick thick. They're just gonna deconstruct that west wall and the west half of the north wall. They're gonna frame it, and so then, and then they'll put a brick veneer on it, and they'll use some of the brick that they deconstructed with. So it's gonna have a brick veneer, wood frame brick veneer, but, what I was told by the owner is they're gonna replicate all of the original window and door openings, restore
Right.
those. They're gonna do the arched headers. So, those are the things that we can comment on, and those really satisfied me, and the HPC approved that.
Okay.
So-
I mean, so the demolition plan has not been approved, or has it?
By us. We really don't have the authority to approve a demolition plan. We just have authority to approve that the demolition can proceed.
Has it been?
By the HPC, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we did that at our last meeting.
okay.
And so with that demolition, again, this was a demolition, of course, we did it because it's not only a demolition, but they asked for a URA grant. And so that came to the HPC for that.
Right. Right, okay. Well, those are my questions. Thanks for your answers, y'all.
You're welcome. I think Steve always wants to do a motion to adjourn, but I like to just say, we're adjourned.